several other events this morning. I regret I wasn't here for the opening statements. I'll make a brief one and then have a quick question. You know, I've looked at the president's proposal in the so-called skinny budget, and you know, for disaster, it's a disaster. And I guess down at the White House have either got amnesia or no sense of history. We're going to go back to the "you're doing a great job" brownie days, as if we don't remember what it's like when we aren't prepared. To cut 25% of the budget for preparedness grants, to cut the pre-disaster mitigation funds, that's whistling through the graveyard. Not going to be any more floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. Don't worry about it. And by the way, don't call the federal government because we won't be there. And oh yeah, your local first responders won't have been trained and they won't have the equipment they need. Otherwise, it's a really great idea. And this is also, we can build a Maginot Line, a wall, so-called, or fence now on the Mexican border. You know, I was in Hong Kong when we still had communist China and the Brits controlled Hong Kong. They had double fencing 20 feet tall. They used lethal force. It had concertina wire, barbed wire, and you could pay a smuggler $1,000 and they'd get you over it in 90 seconds with the ladder contraption they invented. And people came over regularly. But we're going to build a wall or fence through the Superstition Mountains in Arizona, and don't worry, no one will throw drugs over it. Nobody will sneak through it, under it, around it. It's absolutely nuts. But we're going to cut real preparedness to do this. So just one question, since we have a group of people here, I just ask this. Do you think it makes sense to cut the multi-hazard mitigation program when we have the Congressional Budget Office and the Multi-Hazard Mitigation Council saying we save $3 to $4 post-disaster for every dollar we invest? And if you don't think that's an accurate figure and we should cut that budget, let me know. So does anybody want to advocate for cutting that budget and say it'll make us more efficient? Ms. Smith-Reed?
No,
Oh,
I
okay.
would not cut the budget on mitigation. Actually, if we're really going to bend this federal runaway cost curve on disasters, we really need to move away from the current reactive model to a more proactive model. And that means shifting dollars to pre-disaster mitigation, our ability to buy down risk and infuse resiliency within the communities at the local level. That is what is going to support and sustain local jurisdictions more than the reactive model that we have currently in place. So to your point, between fiscal year 2011 and 2014, the federal government allocated roughly $222 million for pre-disaster mitigation compared to $3.2 billion for post-disaster mitigation, which is a ratio of roughly 1 to 14. So, you know, in the aftermath of hurricanes and other large-scale events that we've seen, you can see, based on the photographs that we see in the media, where good mitigation pre-disaster has been applied because you have structures that have withstood the forces that they were up against. So that alone is clear demonstration of a why we need to buy down risk within those high hazard areas of our community and repurpose some of those areas. So if it's moving homes out of the floodplain and to higher ground and repurposing that space and give it back to the community in a different way through park systems or whatever the case may be. That's an example of one thing that Arizona has done, where we bought out a community and moved them to higher ground and gave that space back for the community to use, and they got to decide on what that looked like for the future for their community. So I personally would be encouraging, and I know other state directors also echo this comment, that in order for us to buy down risk, we do need to have more mitigation dollars prior to an event.
Great, excellent. I only have 20 seconds left. Anybody disagree? Okay, no one disagreed. Let the record reflect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes Mr. Bost for